For years, millions of people watched a man who seemed to do the impossible. Aggressive dogs became calm. Frightened pets found confidence. Families on the verge of giving up discovered hope again. To many viewers, he wasn't just a trainer. He was a phenomenon. But behind the success, the best-selling books, and the global fame, a different story was quietly unfolding. As the world celebrated his methods, critics were asking difficult questions. Some wondered whether television was hiding a more complicated reality. Others questioned whether the very thing that made him famous would eventually become his biggest challenge. The end didn't arrive all at once. It came through a series of moments, some public, some deeply personal, that slowly changed everything. What began as one of television's most unlikely success stories eventually became a lesson about fame, pressure, and the cost of living under constant scrutiny. So what really happened? And why did one of television's most recognizable figures find himself at the center of a controversy that would change his career forever? The answer is far more complicated than most people realize. Long before television audiences knew his name, Cesar Millan was simply a young boy growing up in rural Mexico. Animals played a central role in his life. While other children often viewed dogs as pets, he seemed fascinated by how they behaved and communicated. People around him noticed something unusual. Dogs appeared comfortable in his presence. He paid attention to details that others missed. Small changes in posture, movement, and energy seemed meaningful to him. As he grew older, he developed a dream that many would have considered impossible. He wanted to build a life working with dogs. Yet reaching that goal would require leaving behind everything familiar. When he arrived in the United States, the reality was difficult. He had limited resources and spoke very little English. Like many immigrants, he faced uncertainty every day. The future was unclear, and success was far from guaranteed. Psychologically, this period shaped him in important ways. People who overcome significant obstacles often develop strong resilience. Each challenge becomes evidence that they can survive the next one. For Cesar, persistence became one of his defining traits. Slowly, opportunities appeared. He worked with animals, gained experience, and built relationships with clients. Word spread about his ability to handle dogs that others considered impossible. Those success stories eventually attracted attention beyond local communities. Producers saw potential in his work. Television executives recognized a compelling personality. Before long, cameras began following his journey. The Dog Whisperer quickly became a hit. Viewers connected with the idea that difficult problems could be solved through understanding and patience. Cesar became more than a trainer. He became a symbol of transformation. But with every season, expectations grew larger. And while audiences celebrated his success, some observers were beginning to ask difficult questions that would soon become impossible to ignore. The success of the Dog Whisperer rested on a simple but powerful idea. Cesar Millan believed that many behavioral problems could be improved when owners changed their own behavior first. His message resonated because it offered hope. Families who felt overwhelmed by aggressive or anxious dogs suddenly saw a path forward. The program suggested that change was possible. Viewers often witnessed dramatic transformations. Dogs that arrived barking, lunging, or hiding in fear sometimes appeared calmer by the end of an episode. These moments became the foundation of Cesar's reputation. Yet success often attracts scrutiny. As the show's audience expanded, professional trainers and animal behavior experts began examining his methods more closely. Some praised his confidence and ability to communicate with everyday pet owners. They argued that he helped people pay closer attention to their dogs' emotional states. Others strongly disagreed. Critics questioned whether some techniques shown on television relied too heavily on corrections rather than rewards. They worried that viewers might copy advanced methods without proper guidance. The debate reflected something larger than dog training. It revealed how people often react when a public figure becomes highly influential. Psychologically, experts call this polarization. As popularity increases, opinions frequently become more extreme. Supporters grow more loyal. Critics become more vocal. The middle ground slowly disappears. For Cesar, this meant living in a world where praise and criticism existed side by side. Millions admired him. Others challenged nearly everything he represented. The discussion spread through books, interviews, conferences, and online communities. What had once been a straightforward television success story was becoming increasingly complicated. Yet while public debates intensified, another struggle was quietly developing away from the cameras. And unlike criticism from strangers, this challenge would strike much closer to home. From the outside, Cesar Millan's life appeared to be a dream. His television show was thriving. His name had become a recognizable brand. Around the world, people viewed him as an authority on dog behavior. But public success often hides private struggles. As the dog whisperer expanded, so did the demands placed upon him. Filming schedules became more intense. Travel increased. Interviews, public appearances, business ventures, and media obligations filled his calendar. Every success seemed to create even more responsibilities. For many public figures, fame creates a psychological paradox. The more successful they become, the less control they often feel over their own lives. Expectations multiply. Privacy shrinks. Every decision becomes subject to public judgment. Cesar was not immune to these pressures. At the same time, significant challenges were developing within his personal life. Relationships faced strain under the weight of constant attention and professional obligations. The balance between public achievement and private happiness became increasingly difficult to maintain. To viewers, he remained calm and composed. That image had become central to his public identity. People expected confidence. They expected solutions. They expected the man who could help troubled dogs remain steady no matter the situation. Yet maintaining that image required emotional energy. Eventually, personal difficulties reached a breaking point. The period became one of the most painful chapters of his life. For many fans, later revelations about these struggles were deeply surprising. They had seen a successful television personality. They had not seen the emotional burden that existed behind the scenes. His experience served as a reminder that resilience does not mean invulnerability. Even people who appear strong can face moments of profound hardship. The crisis forced him to confront questions about identity, purpose, and personal well-being. At the same time, another challenge was beginning to emerge. The television industry itself was changing, and those changes would soon threaten the very foundation of the show that had made him famous. When the dog whisperer first captured audiences, television looked very different from what it would become years later. Reality-based programming was experiencing enormous growth. Viewers enjoyed transformation stories, larger-than-life personalities, and emotional journeys that could be wrapped into a single episode. The format fit perfectly with Cesar's work, but entertainment industries rarely remain the same for long. As technology evolved, audiences gained access to streaming platforms, social media, and countless new sources of content. Suddenly, viewers had more choices than ever before. Competition for attention became fierce. Programs that once dominated television schedules now had to compete against an endless stream of alternatives. At the same time, public conversations surrounding animal welfare and training practices continued evolving. New research entered mainstream discussions. Social media allowed experts and critics to share opinions instantly with large audiences. Ideas that had once remained inside professional circles were now visible to everyone. Psychologically, this created an interesting shift. People increasingly viewed authority differently. Rather than accepting expertise at face value, audiences became more likely to question, research, and debate. For public figures, this meant greater scrutiny. Every episode, interview, and training demonstration could be analyzed in real time by supporters and critics alike. The Dog Whisperer still had loyal fans. Many credited the show with helping them better understand their pets. But the environment surrounding the program had changed dramatically. Network executives constantly evaluate whether a show fits current audience interests. Success alone does not guarantee permanence. Timing, trends, and public perception all influence long-term decisions. The forces affecting the show were not dramatic enough to create headlines overnight. Instead, they accumulated slowly over years. Like water shaping stone, small changes gradually transformed the landscape. And eventually, those changes would contribute to a decision that many viewers never expected. But was the ending really caused by criticism and changing times alone? The answer was far more complex. Many fans hoped there would be one simple explanation for why the Dog Whisperer eventually ended. People often prefer clear answers. A single controversy, a dramatic conflict, one defining event that explains everything. Reality is rarely that simple. By the time discussions about the show's future emerged, multiple factors were already influencing the situation. The series had enjoyed a remarkable run. It had achieved international recognition and built a loyal audience that few television programs ever reach. From a business perspective, every successful show eventually reaches a crossroads. Networks consider ratings, production costs, audience trends, scheduling priorities, and future programming strategies. The Dog Whisperer was no exception. At the same time, ongoing debates about training philosophy continued shaping public perception. While many viewers remained enthusiastic supporters, critics maintained their concerns regarding certain techniques shown on television. The conversation surrounding Cesar's work had become more complicated than it had been during the show's early years. Interestingly, the growing controversy may have reflected his influence more than his failure. People rarely spend years debating individuals who have no cultural impact. The intensity of the discussion revealed how significant his role had become within the world of dog training. Still, influence does not guarantee permanence. As industry conditions evolved, the program gradually approached its conclusion. The ending was not a sudden collapse. It was the result of years of changing circumstances converging at the same time. For viewers, that reality felt less dramatic than many expected, yet it may have been more honest. The show's final chapter reflected the natural life cycle of many successful television programs. What made the ending notable was not simply that it happened, but what came next. Because even after the cameras stopped rolling, Cesar Millan's story was far from over. In many ways, his greatest challenge was only beginning.